And joining us live in Studio B this morning is the incumbent in District 2, Supervisor Zack Scrivner, who was elected back in 2010 following a stint on the Bakersfield City Council. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
A lot of topics, of course, out on the table, and one of the biggest ones, and something that you addressed in your State of the County address back in January, we're talking oil. The recent decision on fracking up in Fresno by a judge. Many people wondering, and not just Republicans or here in Kern County, but statewide with the price of gas shooting up, why there isn't an increase and why the governor and Sacramento legislators are pushing back on that. Where do you go from here with that decision out of Fresno?
Well, the oil companies and the different trade groups that represent the oil companies, they still have lawsuits in place. And of course, we disagree with the judge's decision. He said that, even though Gavin Newsom said that he wanted to end fracking in California, that was just him exercising his free speech. That wasn't direction to his department, whose department head he appoints, which of course is nonsense. If the governor says he doesn't want something, the people who work for him are going to implement it. But despite that fact, we plan to support the lawsuits moving forward, and also we're continuing to look at strategies so we can get these permits out of Kern County. And remember, back in 2015, we passed a huge EIR that studied all the potential impacts from oil production, and those oil companies, each time they pull a permit, they have to pay for mitigation measures. I'll give you an example. Those oil companies since December of 2015 have spent over $100 million to clean up the air in the Central Valley by replacing diesel engines with electrified engines or natural gas, et cetera. And so all those benefits, as long as those permits aren't happening through Kern County, those benefits are not going to be realized. And so the permits that are being issued, the few being issued out of Sacramento, have none of those mitigations in place. And so this governor that says he cares about the environment, well, they should be supporting us getting our permitting process back in place so those mitigation measures will then be implemented again.
The governor did show up in Kern County, and I'm sure you remember when there was that spill that had happened and was out there, and they were talking about a lot of these types of concerns. I mean, what can the county do to further try to get the message across of some of the things that you're saying? Well,
what we have to do is continue to talk about it. And people in Kern County need to understand that Kern County produces the cleanest and safest oil of any place in the world. All these different mitigation measures don't exist anywhere else. This EIR studied everything: air impacts, water impacts, noise impacts, you name it. And the fact of the matter is that the alternative to producing oil in Kern County, in California, Californians use 1.8 billion barrels of oil a day. Only about 400,000 of that is produced in California, and about 280,000 barrels a day produced out of Kern County. And so where does the rest come from? It comes from countries like Ecuador. Guess who produces the oil in Ecuador? Communist China. So we're sending, along with what we send to Ecuador, $51 billion a year Californians send to countries that have no environmental standards, and a lot of them don't like the United States very much. You look at Iraq, you look at Saudi Arabia, and those are countries that have very poor human rights records, no environmental standards. And so the governor, who claims to care about human rights, who claims to care about the environment, he is polluting more by supporting policies that keep us from producing here at home and bringing in more oil on these huge tankers from other countries. 11 of those big tankers pollute in one day more than every car on the road at any given time in California.
The renewable energy that the governor is pushing for by 2035, I think, is the date that he's thrown out there. Kern County already has. The county's approved 2 more solar projects recently. Is it 60%? Is that the number that I remember? 60% of solar, wind, those types of projects. How do you propose moving forward to make them understand the balance that you say is needed?
Absolutely. Kern County produces 60%, as you said, of all the renewable energy in California. We also produce 80% roughly of all the oil that's produced in California. The governor talks about a just transition. That's his word. But it's anything but just, because his plan will destroy Kern County. It will destroy our economy, because we have 10,000 plus jobs that are directly tied, but also all the other indirect jobs that are tied to the oil industry. $80 million a year goes to the county of Kern in property tax from oil companies that pays for sheriff, fire, parks, libraries, you name it. And $108 million a year goes to our schools. And so obviously our economy and our local governments depend on that oil industry. And so it's very important. And so the just transition is nonsense. But what we need to be talking about is a responsible integration of solve all energy sources. And that's what Kern County does. We're a part of the solution for the state if they're worried about climate change, because we produce that renewable energy that they want. But the governor is giving us no credit for what we contribute. Instead, he wants to destroy our most vital industry, which is oil and gas.
All right, Supervisor Zack Scrivner, we're out of time. Thank you for coming in this morning, and good luck in your race to keep your seat on the Board of Supervisors.
I appreciate being on.
All right, back to the studio.